The elevator doors slid open with a soft ding, and Rebecca Martinez stepped into the chaos that was the 42nd floor of Sterling Corporate Tower in downtown Manhattan. Papers were scattered across the marble floor like autumn leaves. A computer monitor flickered ominously in the distance, and the unmistakable sound of muffled sobbing echoed from behind a partially closed office door. "Ma'am, you can't be up here," called out a security guard, his voice strained with exhaustion. "This floor is restricted access only." Rebecca clutched her worn leather purse tighter and gestured toward the elevator bank. "I'm here for the custodial interview. Building management sent me up when nobody answered the phones downstairs." The guard looked at her with a mixture of confusion and pity. "Lady, there ain't gonna be no interview today. Hell, there might not be a company left by tomorrow morning." As if summoned by his words, another round of shouting erupted from the corner office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Central Park and bore the nameplate Marcus Sterling CEO in elegant gold lettering. The voice behind the door was deep, commanding, and absolutely furious. "Incompetent, every last one of you." The words carried across the entire floor, causing several remaining employees to flinch at their desks. "I don't care if your grandmother died, your dog is sick, or your feelings are hurt. I care about results." Rebecca watched as a young woman in an expensive blazer stumbled out of the office, mascara streaming down her cheeks, clutching a cardboard box filled with personal items. She was the fourth person to make this walk of shame in the past hour, according to the whispered conversations Rebecca had overheard while waiting in the lobby. "That's Stephanie," the security guard murmured. "Harvard MBA. Lasted 3 weeks. The record was held by James. He made it a whole month before Sterling broke him." "What exactly does this man do to his assistants?" Rebecca asked, genuinely curious rather than afraid. The guard shook his head. "Changes demands by the hour. Expects mind reading. Screams when you ask for clarification. Screams when you don't. He's gone through 12 executive assistants in 8 months. The HR department stopped taking applications last week." Another crash echoed from the office, followed by Sterling's voice. "Get me someone who isn't a complete waste of oxygen." Rebecca studied the chaos around her, the scattered papers, the abandoned desks, the shell-shocked expressions of the few employees still brave enough to remain on the floor. Her 8-year-old daughter Sophia would be getting out of school in 3 hours, and Rebecca needed this job. Any job. The eviction notice tucked in her purse was dated for next Friday, and her bank account showed a balance that wouldn't cover a decent meal, let alone rent. "What's his deal?" she asked the guard, nodding toward Sterling's office. "Marcus Sterling? Inherited this place from his daddy when he was 25? Silver spoon so far up his—" The guard caught himself. "Let's just say he ain't never had to work for nothing. Company's worth 200 million, but word is they're bleeding money because nobody can stand working for him." Sterling's door flew open again, and this time the man himself appeared. Rebecca had seen his photo in business magazines during her job searches, but the pictures didn't capture the intensity radiating from his 6-foot frame. His dark hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled, and his steel gray eyes swept across the floor like a predator searching for prey. "Where is everyone?" he bellowed, seemingly to the air itself. "They quit, sir," came a small voice from behind a computer monitor. "All of them, even Janet from accounting." "Janet's been here 15 years, the security guard whispered to Rebecca. Sterling's gaze landed on Rebecca, and she felt the full weight of his attention. "Who are you?" "Rebecca Martinez," she replied calmly, meeting his stare without flinching. "I'm here about a custodial position." "Custodial?" Sterling laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Perfect. The whole company's going to hell and they're sending me janitors." Something in his tone, the casual dismissal, the automatic assumption that she was beneath his notice, sparked something in Rebecca. She'd spent years being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed by employers who wouldn't hire a single mother without a college degree, by landlords who saw her work uniform and assumed she couldn't pay rent, by teachers who looked at Sophia's address and expected less. "Actually," Rebecca said, stepping forward, "it sounds like you need more than a janitor. It sounds like you need someone who can actually handle you." The floor went silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to pause. Sterling's eyebrows rose slowly, and for a moment, Rebecca wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. "Excuse me?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Rebecca gestured to the scattered papers, the abandoned desks, the tear-stained faces of departing employees. "This isn't a management problem. This is a leadership problem. You're not losing assistants because they can't do the job. You're losing them because you've forgotten that they're human beings." Sterling took a step closer, his presence intimidating in a way that suggested he was used to people backing down. "And you think you're qualified to lecture me about leadership? I think I'm qualified to recognize when someone's drowning," Rebecca replied evenly. "And right now, Mr. Sterling, you're drowning in your own anger." The security guard behind her made a small sound. Whether of admiration or horror, Rebecca couldn't tell. She kept her eyes locked on Sterling's, refusing to look away, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "I've raised a daughter on my own for 8 years," she continued. "I've worked 3 jobs at once, attended every parent-teacher conference and never missed a rent payment until last month. I've dealt with screaming customers, impossible deadlines, and bosses who thought yelling was a management strategy. The difference is I learned that treating people with respect gets better results than treating them like disposable garbage." Sterling was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those piercing grey eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its edge, replaced by something that might have been curiosity. "And what makes you think you could succeed where Harvard MBAs have failed?" Rebecca smiled for the first time since entering the building. "Because I'm not trying to impress you, Mr. Sterling. I'm trying to survive. And survival makes you learn things that business school never teaches." What do you think Rebecca just walked into? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire ready to snap at any moment. Rebecca could feel the eyes of every remaining employee on the floor boring into her back, waiting to see if she would become the next casualty in Marcus Sterling's war against competence. Sterling circled her slowly, like a shark sizing up its prey. "Survival," he repeated, tasting the word. "Tell me, Miss Martinez, what exactly do you know about running a $200 million corporation?" "Nothing," Rebecca admitted without hesitation. "But I know about people. And right now, your people problem is bigger than any business problem you might have." A bitter laugh escaped Sterling's lips. "My people problem? I don't have a people problem. I have a competence problem. I have a dedication problem. You have a trust problem," Rebecca interrupted, causing several nearby employees to audibly gasp. No one interrupted Marcus Sterling, ever. His grey eyes flashed dangerously. "Excuse me?" Rebecca gestured toward the elevator bank, where another employee was hastily gathering his belongings. "When was the last time someone told you the truth in this office? Not what you wanted to hear, not what they thought would save their job, but the actual truth." Sterling's jaw tightened. "I pay people to give me results, not truth sessions." "And how's that working out for you?" Rebecca shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're about to be the CEO of an empty building." The security guard took a small step backward, clearly preparing for an explosion. Instead, Sterling went very still, studying Rebecca with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You want to know what I think?" Rebecca continued, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I think you're scared." "Scared?" Sterling's voice was deadly quiet. "Terrified," Rebecca confirmed. "You inherited this company, which means you never had to prove you deserved it. So now you push everyone away before they have a chance to discover you might not be as brilliant as your father was. It's easier to blame everyone else for failing than to risk failing yourself." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Rebecca watched Sterling's face cycle through several emotions: shock, anger, and something that might have been recognition. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said finally, but the words lacked his earlier venom. "Maybe not," Rebecca conceded, "but I know what desperation looks like, and I know what pride costs. Right now, your pride is costing you everything." Sterling turned away from her, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. His reflection in the glass looked older than his 32 years, worn down by the weight of expectations and the burden of a legacy he'd never asked for. "My father built this company from nothing," he said quietly, his back still to Rebecca. "Started in a garage in Queens with a $1,000 loan and a dream. By the time he died, Sterling Corp was worth $50 million. Rebecca waited, sensing there was more. "I've quadrupled that in 7 years," Sterling continued. "Quadrupled it. But somehow that's never enough. Not for the board, not for the investors, not for—" He trailed off. "Not for yourself," Rebecca finished softly. Sterling's shoulders tensed. "Every decision I make affects hundreds of jobs, millions in revenue. I can't afford to be wrong. So you don't let anyone close enough to tell you when you are wrong," Rebecca observed, "which guarantees you'll keep making the same mistakes." He turned back to face her, and for a moment Rebecca saw past the anger and the arrogance to the exhausted man underneath. "And what would you do differently?" It was a test, Rebecca realized, maybe the most important test of her life. "I'd start by apologizing," she said simply. Sterling blinked. Apologizing? To everyone still brave enough to be here. Then I'd ask them what's really going wrong with the company, and I'd actually listen to their answers. "That's your big solution? Apologies and feeling circles?" Rebecca shook her head. "That's the foundation. You can't build anything lasting on fear and anger. Trust me, I've tried." She thought of the nights she'd snapped at Sophia over homework, when she was really angry about unpaid bills, the way her daughter had started walking on eggshells around her. Anger might get you compliance, but it'll never get you loyalty. And loyalty is what you need if you want this company to survive whatever's coming. Sterling studied her for a long moment. "You really think you could handle working for me?" "I think the question is whether you could handle working with me," Rebecca replied, "because that's what this would have to be, a partnership. You bring the business knowledge, I bring the people skills. We figure out how to fix this mess together. And if I refuse?" Rebecca shrugged. "Then I go back downstairs, take whatever custodial job they have, and you keep cycling through assistants until there's nobody left to quit." The silence returned, but this time it felt different, charged with possibility rather than hostility. Sterling walked back to his office doorway and picked up a crystal paperweight from the floor, one of the casualties of his earlier tantrum. "The position pays $60,000 a year," he said finally, "plus health insurance and 2 weeks vacation." Rebecca's heart skipped. It was more money than she'd ever made in her life. "What about Sophia?" "Sophia? My daughter. She's 8. Sometimes she'll need to come here after school if I can't find childcare." Sterling's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. "You're negotiating terms before you've even been offered the job." "I'm being honest about what I need," Rebecca corrected. "Another thing you're not used to, apparently." A ghost of a smile crossed Sterling's face. $70,000. She can use the conference room for homework if needed. Rebecca extended her hand. "Deal." Sterling looked at her outstretched hand for a moment before taking it. His grip was firm, calloused despite his privileged background. "Don't make me regret this, Ms. Martinez. Don't give me a reason to quit, Mr. Sterling." As they shook hands, Rebecca caught sight of the security guard's amazed expression and the hopeful faces of the employees who had witnessed the entire exchange. For the first time in months, she felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. But as Sterling released her hand and turned back toward his office, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Rebecca arrived at Sterling Corporate Tower at 6:30 a.m., just as she had every morning since accepting the position. The security guard, Tony, she'd learned his name, nodded at her with something approaching respect as she badged into the elevator. "Morning, Mrs. Martinez. He's already up there." "I know," Rebecca replied, balancing 2 coffee cups and a bag of fresh bagels from the deli across the street. "He never leaves." The 42nd floor had transformed dramatically since her first day. The scattered papers were gone, replaced by organized filing systems. The abandoned desks now housed new employees, people Rebecca had personally interviewed and recommended. But the real change was in the atmosphere. People actually talked to each other now, instead of communicating in fearful whispers. Rebecca knocked on Sterling's office door before entering. It was a small gesture, but one that had taken 2 weeks of patient insistence to establish. "Marcus?" She stepped inside to find him hunched over financial reports, his hair disheveled and his shirt wrinkled from sleeping at the office again. "When was the last time you went home?" "Tuesday," he muttered without looking up. "Maybe Monday. The quarterly reports are due to the board on Friday, and the numbers don't add up." Rebecca set one of the coffee cups on his desk. Black, no sugar, exactly how he'd mentioned liking it during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "What kind of numbers?" "Revenue projections versus actual income. We're down 18% from last quarter, but I can't figure out why." He finally looked up, and Rebecca was struck by the exhaustion in his gray eyes. Maybe the board was right, maybe I'm not cut out for this. It was the first time she'd heard him express genuine doubt, and it caught her off guard. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd watched him slowly let his guard down, but this level of vulnerability was new. "Show me," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. For the next hour, they pored over spreadsheets and financial projections. Rebecca didn't understand all the technical aspects, but she'd developed a skill for spotting patterns, a survival mechanism from years of managing household budgets that never quite stretched far enough. "Here," she said finally, pointing to a column of numbers. "These client retention figures, they're all dropping off around the same time frame." Sterling leaned over to look where she was pointing, and Rebecca caught a whiff of his expensive cologne, mixed with the exhaustion scent of too much coffee and too little sleep. "March through June," he said slowly. "That's when you were going through assistants like tissues," Rebecca finished. "Think about it. If you were a client trying to get through to the CEO, and every time you called, there was a different person who didn't know your account, didn't understand your needs, and was probably in tears, you'd take your business elsewhere." Sterling completed the thought, his voice hollow. "God, Rebecca. Those contracts were worth $12 million. The use of her first name wasn't lost on her. It had taken him 2 weeks to stop calling her Ms. Martinez in that dismissive tone. "It's not just about the money you lost," Rebecca continued gently. "It's about the relationships you damaged. Business is personal, even when people pretend it isn't." Sterling slumped back in his chair, running his hands through his dark hair. "So what do I do? How do I fix 18 months of being a complete ass?" Rebecca supplied with a small smile. Despite everything, Sterling laughed. "I was going to say difficult boss, but your version is more accurate." It was moments like these that reminded Rebecca why she'd taken this impossible job. Underneath all the anger and arrogance was a man who genuinely cared about the company his father had built, even if he'd forgotten how to show it. "We start with the relationships we can still save," she said. "Make personal calls to the clients who left, not to grovel, but to acknowledge what went wrong and show them how things have changed. They'll hang up on me. Some will," Rebecca agreed, "but some won't. And the ones who give you a second chance, they'll become your most loyal clients because they'll know you fought to keep them." Sterling stared at the financial reports for a long moment. "This is going to be humiliating." "Good," Rebecca said firmly. "Humility builds character, and honestly, you could use some character building." He shot her a look that might have been offended, but there was no real heat in it. "You know, my previous assistants never told me I needed character building. Your previous assistants were afraid of you. I'm just afraid of being evicted." The joke fell flat as soon as Rebecca said it, and she saw Sterling's expression shift. "Are you still—" He trailed off, seeming unsure how to finish the question. "I'm fine," Rebecca said quickly. "The salary increase helped. Sophia and I are good." But Sterling was studying her with that intense focus she'd come to recognize. "You're lying." "I'm managing." "Rebecca." His voice was surprisingly gentle. "What's really going on?" She looked at him for a long moment, weighing whether to maintain the professional boundary she'd carefully constructed or to trust him with the truth. Finally, she sighed. "Sophia needs surgery," she admitted. "Nothing life-threatening, but her doctor says if we wait much longer it could become a bigger problem. The insurance covers most of it, but the deductible is more than I've been able to save." Sterling was quiet for several heartbeats. "How much?" "Marcus, no. I didn't tell you so you would." "How much?" The firmness in his voice reminded her of the old Sterling, but there was something different in his eyes now. Not anger, but determination. $5,000, she said quietly. "Consider it a performance bonus." Rebecca shook her head immediately. "I can't accept that. It wouldn't be right." "It would be a business investment," Sterling replied. "I need you focused on fixing this company, not worried about your daughter's health. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "you've saved me at least $12 million in potential future mistakes. 5,000 seems like a bargain." For a moment, Rebecca felt tears threaten, not of sadness, but of relief so profound it took her breath away. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet," Sterling said, turning back to the financial reports. "We still have to convince $18 million worth of clients to give us another chance." Rebecca wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. "Then we better get started. If this story is touching you in some way, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Every place has its own struggles, and sometimes it's incredible how we all connect through such human stories. 6 months later, Rebecca stood in the same spot where she'd first confronted Marcus Sterling, but everything had changed. The 42nd floor buzzed with productive energy, filled with employees who actually seemed happy to be there. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a workspace that felt alive with possibility rather than suffocated by fear. "Mom, look!" Sophia's voice carried across the conference room where she was working on her homework. The 8-year-old held up a math worksheet covered in gold stars. "Mrs. Peterson said I got the highest score in the class." Rebecca smiled, watching her daughter through the glass partition. Sophia's surgery had been a complete success, and the confidence boost from being pain-free had transformed her both academically and socially. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Finish up. We're going to dinner soon." "Is Mr. Sterling coming too?" Sophia asked hopefully. Over the past few months, Marcus had become an unexpected fixture in their lives. He'd started joining them for dinner on late work nights, initially out of guilt for keeping Rebecca at the office, but increasingly because he seemed to genuinely enjoy Sophia's endless questions about everything from why elevators worked to whether rich people really ate different food than everyone else. "He'll try," Rebecca replied, knowing that Marcus was currently in the most important meeting of his career. In the boardroom down the hall, Marcus faced the Sterling Corp Board of Directors for the quarterly review that would determine his future with the company. Rebecca had watched him prepare for weeks, but she knew this was something he had to do alone. "The numbers speak for themselves," Marcus was saying to the 12 board members seated around the mahogany table. "Not only have we recovered the 18 million in lost revenue, we've exceeded last year's projections by 23%. Board member Patricia Hensworth, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who had been his father's closest advisor, leaned forward. "Impressive figures, Marcus. But we're more interested in the sustainability of these changes. What assurance do we have that this isn't just a temporary uptick?" Marcus had anticipated this question. 6 months ago, he would have responded with anger or defensiveness. Today, he spoke with quiet confidence. "The real measure isn't in quarterly reports," he said. "It's in our employee retention rate, which has gone from 30% to 94%. It's in client satisfaction surveys that show a 40% improvement in service ratings. It's in the fact that we have a 6-month waiting list of qualified candidates who want to work here." Another board member, Robert Chen, shuffled through the papers in front of him. "These changes coincided with your hiring of Rebecca Martinez as executive assistant. Some might argue that you're simply more organized now." Marcus smiled, thinking of Rebecca's reaction when she learned the board was discussing her by name. She'd been horrified at the attention, insisting she was just doing her job. "Rebecca Martinez didn't just organize my schedule," Marcus replied. "She taught me something my business education never covered, that leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about creating an environment where everyone can be smart together." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city his father had loved. 6 months ago, I was running this company through fear and intimidation because I was terrified of failing. I thought if I could control everything and everyone, I could guarantee success. All I guaranteed was that good people would leave and take their talents somewhere else. The room was silent, and Marcus could feel the weight of their attention. "Rebecca showed me that real strength isn't about never being wrong," he continued. "It's about being wrong gracefully, learning from it, and surrounding yourself with people who care enough to tell you the truth. She didn't just save my company, she saved me from becoming the kind of leader I never wanted to be." Patricia Hensworth exchanged glances with the other board members. "Marcus, your father built this company on relationships and trust. For a while we were concerned you'd forgotten that." "I had," Marcus admitted, "but I remember now." The vote was unanimous. Marcus would continue as CEO with full board support for his leadership approach. An hour later, Marcus found Rebecca in the conference room, helping Sophia with a science project about solar systems. "How did it go?" Rebecca asked, though she could tell from his expression that it had gone well. "They want to offer you a promotion," Marcus said, settling into a chair beside them. "Vice President of Human Relations, your own office, a substantial raise, and the authority to implement your ideas company-wide." Rebecca's eyes widened. "Marcus, Before you say anything," he interrupted, "I want you to know that whatever you decide, Sophia's college fund is secure. I've already set it up." "You did what?" Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. "Every parent should have the option to dream big for their child," Marcus said simply. "You've given me back my company, my relationship with the people who work here, and honestly, the first real friendship I've had since college. It's the least I can do." Sophia looked up from her project, glue stick in hand. "Does this mean Mom doesn't have to worry about money anymore?" Marcus and Rebecca exchanged a look over her head. "It means," Rebecca said carefully, "that we have choices now. Real choices." 6 months ago, Rebecca had been a desperate single mother facing eviction, willing to take any job to survive. Now she was looking at an opportunity to transform not just her own life, but potentially the lives of thousands of employees across the company. "There's one condition," Marcus added with a slight smile. "You have to promise to keep telling me when I'm being an ass." Rebecca laughed, the sound bright and free. That might be the easiest part of the job. As the sun set over Manhattan, casting golden light across the 42nd floor, Rebecca realized that sometimes the most extraordinary transformations begin with the simplest act of courage. The decision to speak truth to power even when you have everything to lose. Some stories end with rescues. This one ended with resurrection of a company, a leader, and a woman who discovered that survival could become something far more powerful, the ability to help others thrive.